Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 24 of The Dive. This week, Kobe is still out, Phreak is here.
Yay!
Also, just telling us everything I'm saying.
Yeah.
Is,
For those who are listening in audio, I gestured 2 and then 24, and then Isaiah laughed.
Yeah.
That's what
I
happened.
think instead of watching an audio, by the way.
We're off to a roaring start.
It's a real humdinger.
Yeah, anyway, Kobe's just getting
barn
back from Hyperplay in Singapore. That's why he's not here. He should be back next week.
Lazy.
Unless something else happens. He went to Singapore. It was
Yes.
did an event that
Why
had,
didn't he call in
long
the show
shoot-
from
show
Singapore?
days. We can't have Collins on the show, Phreak.
Oh, okay.
It's too technically difficult.
Yeah.
We
No
could.
podcast ever does call-ins when they talk.
What
to
we should
people.
do for next
It's
week if
impossible.
Kobe doesn't show up is Phreak can just like hold a monitor in front of his face and it can
Yeah.
be Kobe in his bed, you know?
Yeah.
So you can just be
It'll
like,
be like Critical Role. He'll just call in and be like, "Here you go, he's here." And
Exactly.
the audio quality's terrible. It'll be great.
We're going to start with news. One thing that's happened this split is the LCK is essentially running ahead of schedule because they compressed it so that they could compete in the Asian games. There's a bunch of stuff going on there. So they're actually pretty much locked as far as the teams that are in the playoffs. SKT is not in the playoffs, but they will have enough points for the regional qualifier after the playoffs. That's coming up in a while. We'll see if Faker is there. But the bigger thing is the teams that are in. We got Griffin, who, even though they have the same record as Genji, have the
game
number
score.
1 seed because of a better game score. Then there's Genji, and then Kingzone and KT are actually going to be playing tonight to decide seeding. And then Afrika is the final team that's going to be in the playoffs.
Hanwha is fifth as well.
Hanwha is not in the
Oh,
playoffs.
are they?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess that was off of tie. I'm looking at the standings now,
Yeah.
but I guess
Okay,
it must
yeah.
be off of tie. That must be off tiebreakers.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Afrika slinks in, which I'm excited about. I'm still a big Afrika fan just because they do cool stuff. They're one of the teams that like showed the world Relic Shield Ardent Sensor meta, which as a bot laner was just, vindicated that I am the most important person in the Rift. Not that I thought it was the most
Everyone
exciting
else
part of
just
the
had
game.
to accept it.
Everyone had to accept, like, see? Yeah. You're all about Ardent Sensor for me. Let's go. It's all about my Jinx. But no, I just like that team, and so I'm glad that they're in playoffs. Of course, there's still, I think as we talked about last week, a lot of exciting teams in LCK. Griffin straight out of Challenger all the way to number 1 regular season. They're making at least finals. If they don't win the finals, if they do win the finals, they're going to Worlds, which is awesome for them at the very least. And if they don't, they have a really good seed in the regional playoffs to go to Worlds
Yeah.
anyway. So
I'm really hoping they make it to Worlds.
Yeah.
I think, you talk about exciting teams. Griffin has really been that for me. Like Viper has been a guy that I feel like has just kind of like ascended to stardom almost instantaneously. It feels like he plays everything. It's really exciting to see them play and have this much flexibility. And I hope that they would be a team that could live up to the hype and not kind of fall prey to the nerves, as we've seen Kingzone do a few times. Like they have obviously struggled to kind of meet the hype that they have built from LCK when they're playing internationally. So I think a lot of Korean fans are ready for like a new wave of stars, right?
Yeah.
SKT is not, yes, they theoretically can still make Worlds, but they didn't make playoffs. They have not looked strong this whole year. I think it would be a shocker for them to get through the gauntlet.
Right.
So like they have kind of fallen off. Kingzone has had a couple chances. I think people are tired of seeing them
they keep
fail.
failing when it matters. So it's like Kingzone had the chance and kind of dropped the ball so far.
Kingzone has failed internationally when they had the chance.
Sure.
Been pretty dominant in Korea. I feel like actually I would not put Griffin as the favorites in the playoffs. The finals, if Lolly Sports is correct, is in a month. So it's actually September 8th. It's about 2 weeks after the semifinals. That'll be the first time Griffin plays on stage in a month. They finished the first half of the regular season super strong, and then they finished essentially like 12-5, 12-6, something like that. They've lost a bunch of games in the second half. When you compare it with Kingzone, who actually I feel like once 80 carries are back, and I think will continue to be back in patch 8.15, are probably the best team in Korea again. If they play against Kingzone, I think they wouldn't be favorites. If they play against Genji at this point, with, once again, a team that never even did funnel or a lot of the mage bottom lanes, which I think is what Griffin was really good at. They were really good at being super flexible, being very quick to pick up a funnel strategy, move their players around, do weird bot lanes.
Yeah.
That stuff's just not as optimal anymore. So I would still favor Genji, who used to be Samsung, or Kingzone against them in the finals.
To devil's advocate slightly, I think there is value though. So In general, I think that not playing for a month tends to be a weakness, though I think for some teams it can be a plus. The devil's advocate point I want to bring up, though, is if they are not on stage for a month and it's been patch locked for a month, and you get to watch Gen G or Kingzone or whoever play through the playoffs, it's like, by the way, we have a Riven Yasuo bot that's really good, and you've literally never played against it. Good luck in game one, right? Like, that's the kind of thing where this would be a strength for them, and on total, I don't know if it's a buff or a nerf, but I think like the team that's willing to innovate, that has time to innovate, and in darkness, I think can have like 5 unique you've never seen before champ selects.
You can. I just don't feel like that happens, right? I think Kingzone is the only team in my LCK memory that has been able to kind of be slightly a new team, go to finals, and then have something kind of new in finals. It's so hard to actually hold the strategy and be confident enough in the strategy to pull it out on stage and then have it actually work.
That's fair.
It's definitely possible. Don't get me wrong, but
I feel like they've done that
in my following of the LCK finals. Like a lot of times, the team that is preceded there actually doesn't do that well. It's the team that has momentum throughout the playoffs, especially when they're a rookie team who had a bad second half of the split.
That's fair.
In comparison to their first half.
I think the bad second half is the most damning of the stats, where it's like, actually, they've slunk into this spot, and because of LCK seeding rules, you get to go to the finals as opposed to like the semifinals like an NA or EU would have been.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's still like 5-4 in the second half, and they're 13-5 overall, right? So obviously a much stronger first half. But
like Genji's 13-5, KT Roasters 12-5, Kingzone's 12-5.
Yep. And my point was never that I think they're favored. It's more just I hope they get to Worlds because I think they're very exciting. But I do think that if there is a team to actually, be innovating and to have confidence to bring out these strategies, it makes sense that Griffin would do that, right? They have done that all year long. They're the ones bringing out Teemo Bot. They're the ones playing like all these different things. They have a tremendous amount of flexibility, and I think especially like in a world where the meta has settled and maybe they're not as strong straight up as some of the other teams, I think you do have a lot of time to prepare and try to like figure out a way to beat these teams.
So who's your favorite in LCK playoffs? Because depending on if KT Rolster and Kingzone win tonight, which they both possibly could, you could actually have 4 teams that end the season at 13-5, and basically game score and head-to-head score seeds the entire playoffs.
I feel like Gen G is kind of who I'm favoring right now. I just think that like, because it feels so much to me like everything is moving back to normalcy, and it's more and more just marksman in the bottom lane. That is what they've done all year long. That is what they did to win the world championship. Like, this is a team that I think has had a tremendous amount of stability. Kingzone has had a lot of regional dominance, and certainly I think they would maybe be like my next pick out of that kind of group. But I don't have the most faith in KT. I just feel like they always kind of disappoint.
Why not? Why don't you have faith in
no
KT?
one should ever have faith in
KT.
KT.
Do great.
So I don't know. To me, it's just kind of like until Griffin does it, it's almost hard to believe that they will do it, because it's just like such an insane story that people can come straight from Challenger into professional play. And not only have
story.
But I mean, it's been so long since that's happened, right? And it feels so much more unlikely these days because everyone is so established and there's so much support behind these big orgs. It's like, not only did they just go straight into LCK, crush in. I remember last year before they had gotten into LCK, people were talking about, oh, they might be like a top 5, top 6 team in the LCK. Like, that's pretty insane.
They might make playoffs.
Now they finished first in the regular season. Like, that's absurd already. So I'm kind of waiting for the other shoe to fall, I guess. But yeah, Gen G, I guess, would be my favorite.
Phreak, do you have a favorite?
I mean, I guess I'll just stick with Griffin. Not for any particular reason other than I think it just would be really cool to see them just hold on to the first place. I mean, ultimately, like the teams like that I would kind of like want to go would be like, I want to see Griffin go because that's really cool. I want to see Gen G go to defend their championship, and like I want to see either SKT just because it's SKT and that's just like a draw in itself, and then like they make that run like Cloud9 did a couple years ago, or you get like. Or like a Phreaka, because I think a Phreaka is really cool, and like them getting to go would be nice.
Right?
Is that the most exciting result if SKT runs the gauntlet and Fakers slam in?
Come on, that would be hype.
I think it would.
That would be actually.
I'm not saying it wouldn't be. I'm just asking.
But like, I'm sure there's some fans who are like, I'm tired of SKT winning everything. It was like, well, at least they lost Worlds last time. They didn't go to MSI last time. China went MSI last time. Like, at a certain point, you're allowed to have the old guard come back.
Yeah.
SKT and TSM make their run back. They have a
Give me
quarterfinal
the
matchup.
1v9 Faker.
Yeah, right?
Get him in there.
Faker's
And then he loses to Timobot.
Yeah,
Like,
Faker and
that's the
Uzi
run.
are the two biggest league stars in the
Yeah.
world. If
Yeah.
Faker's not there, Worlds just feels different.
The darkest timeline is if Faker doesn't even play in the gauntlet. He gets slammed in the first round.
know.
That's where it's just like, all right, okay, SKT, you lose your Faker privileges. You now must trade him.
I would sign that petition.
yeah. If you don't play him in the
Faker must
gauntlet,
start.
you
Hashtag
must trade him.
Hashtag free Faker.
Yeah.
But my prediction would be Kingzone, actually. I'm looking at the
Okay.
champions that they actually lost with. Like, Prey is 11-1 on Ezreal this split, but
pretty good.
he's 1-4 on Swain, 1-2 on Mordekaiser, 1-1 on Vladimir, 0-1 on Zillion. But whenever you mouse over one of his marksman picks, he's really good. And that's all they're going to be playing. They're not going to be trying with any of this other muckery.
Sure.
And they're just going to...
Muckery.
Yeah, that's
what
not
a
a word.
term.
This tomfoolery.
This tomfoolery.
These shenanigans.
And they're going to win because they've won 2 splits in a row, and
Yep.
they're actually super clutch in Korea. Internationally is just where they've been lacking. That's my
They're,
opinion.
they're becoming
and
the
that means,
TSM of Korea, where the fans are like, no, don't win. You're going to disappoint us.
that means it's probably really difficult for Griffin to go because they have, since they're a new team, they have no championship points from
Right.
spring.
Yeah. They have to gauntlet.
So there's a good chance that Genji or KT Rolster gets the second spot in Korea from championship points. And then that would mean, if this happens, obviously,
Yeah.
that would mean that Griffin then has to win best of 5s in the regional qualifier, either against Genji or KT Rolster and a Phreak of Phreaks
Yeah.
or an SKT. Like, obviously they can do that, especially if you're going to predict them to win the whole split. But
Yeah.
that just, it shows you how important that a lot of those championship points are. Because normally if you're in the finals in Summer Split, a lot of times win or lose, you're going to Worlds, which is the situation Kingzone would be in if they make it 2 finals. A win would make them go to Worlds as the 1 seed, and a loss would make them go to Worlds as the 2 seed.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. Finals is Worlds automatically.
yeah, for Kingzone.
Yeah, yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
Korea's going to be very exciting. Those playoffs start very soon, by the way. Their first game, I believe, is this weekend. That'll be the wild card. It's actually a best of 3 for the first round. Then they go to
Yeah,
best of 5.
which always feels weird to me because it's essentially actually playoffs. It's just a 5-team playoff.
Yep.
It's not a 4-team playoff with a wild card. It's like, no, there's a first match. It's whatever, but I always found that weird.
You just don't like
it's
the
never
naming
changed.
convention.
It's never changed.
Yeah. Well, it has. They used to do blind picking. Game
Oh, okay,
5.
sure. Sorry. As far as, but okay, yes. When you go back to like
Got
the
it.
whole like bracket stage, whatever, like, but whatever. It's a random point.
Yep. All right. So there's been a lot of coaching changes in the NA LCS of recent weeks. Obviously, we saw Enero stepping down for Echo Fox. And then we hear that Golden Guardians, I believe the wording was their LCS staff and coach are going to be stepping back, like which to me is sounding okay. Well, you're getting rid of the whole staff, at least for now. Enero kind of signed on as a consultant for them. And then the bombshell that kind of dropped recently is Zikz is parting ways with CLG, and that one really shocked me.
Yeah. Oh, and Clutch Gaming no longer with DLM as of a week ago as
another
well.
one. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is to add more fuel to that fire is Enero tweeted out last night, if I can like quote it properly in my mind, it's like a lot of really good changes coming for the league. Like this is just a start, but we're going the right direction. Seemingly about all the coaching changes. So he seems to, I mean, and I'm reading into it to be fair. Like maybe I'm thinking about it wrong, but it's like he thinks there's a lot of coaches coaching wrong, and he wants to like lead the charge into like proper coaching in NA. And from talking with him, I've always respected his opinions and his way of going about stuff. I think he's
He said
a
happy
smart
with the
dude.
direction of the league, but it's just a start. That was 13 hours ago.
Yeah, and it seemed to be like right after all the coaching updates, and like there have been 4 of them in a row, right over the last week or so. That's because there's no other league news coming out, right? It wasn't like they were like, oh, we're announcing changes to League of Legends or like a rule set to like NA LCS. So that's what I'm guessing it is.
Yeah. Can we talk about Zikz first?
Yeah, let's do it.
Because that's the most shocking one to me.
Yeah.
Only because he's been with CLG for so long.
5 years.
5 years, 2
Yeah.
championships, MSI final.
And
That's his.
they're sitting at, 9 losses in the standings?
Yeah, they're down there.
Yeah, so they essentially have to win out to make playoffs. So I feel like their season is basically over. And I understand from COG's perspective the need to make changes as an organization that has gone to Worlds a lot of times to not even make playoffs for 2 splits in a row.
Yeah.
I just wish they would have waited 2 weeks. Like I don't think that much is going to happen from a Zikz perspective unless they actually let him go somewhere else. for the next 2 weeks. And I need to get confirmation on this, but I believe because of the roster lock, he couldn't be like a head coach for someone else, but he could easily be a consultant.
Yeah, so you can work for a
team.
company.
And the thing
you
is,
just can't be rostered.
You can still, like, in all but name, be the head coach, right? Like, if a team has that much faith in
You just can't be on stage.
Exactly. You can't step on stage, but you can tell the person who's stepping on stage exactly what to draft and have it all worked out. And he's a guy that's going to be highly sought after.
But that brings up the question, do you think Zikz, it's hard to know with coaches, but do you think Zikz was doing a good job?
So all of my experience from talking to other coaches and talking to Zikz has led me to believe that he is a very good coach, that he seems to be extremely well respected by his players. I've never heard them say really anything bad about him. Talking to other coaches in the league, by far this is the guy who was brought up the most as person who should be winning coach of the split. So his peers seem to have a ton of respect for him. I have always thought he seemed extremely smart about the game when I've talked to him. Is he doing a good job with the pieces, or like, that he had at CLG? They have done poorly. Should he have been able to teach them to do better in the mid game, the late game? That's a fair argument to make.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, I think he's a great coach. Did he do a good job with CLG? That's really impossible to know. I would say no, because the team is down at the bottom of the standings. But if it were me, I probably would have been looking more at like roster changes than coaching changes. Maybe they just felt the pressure to make something happen right now. But I don't think that the CLG roster will be the same going into next year. I would bet money that it will not be. And then in that situation, should you have moved Zikz at all, right? Or should you have waited and seen kind of what he can do with maybe an improved roster?
And it's possible that like it's things that we can't tell, like
Exactly,
and this is not founded at all. Don't hate me. Like, what if there's like huge interpersonal issues, like we tried about last week? But seriously, it's like maybe he doesn't know how to coach the 2018 season, like for whatever reason, and like when we don't think 2019 is going to get any different. Like your time has passed, you no longer keep up with the game. Like I don't know, right? But like I do think there's a certain amount of like. Sometimes people just work together very well, and sometimes they don't. And this might be the situation. And maybe they like their players more than like their coach. So like, no, we're super happy with Battlefrost, super happy with Reignover. Like, we want these guys for 4 years, and Zikz doesn't work with them very well. So sorry, and I don't know, right?
Yeah, but Zikz was under contract until the end of 2019. I checked when I saw the news, so they could have kept him on for a while. And man, Phreak, I don't know, because part of me thinks that Zikz had fallen off a little bit, right? I know that a lot of COG's drafts come under heavy criticism. It didn't look like when's the last time it felt like COG was on or ahead of the meta? That used to happen a lot. That used to be a very frequent thing in 2017, 2016. And it wasn't a thing this split. And a coach has a lot of different jobs. It's depending on what type of coach you are, you're good at interpersonal issues, you're good at motivation, you're really smart. Right? You're really good at telling people about the game. You can fit any of those skill sets as long as you index in one of them. And I think previously Zikz was really smart about the game, but also how much of Zix's success was linked with how well he worked with Afromu. Because this team without Afromu has been a large detriment. And I wonder if COG thinks that, well, Zikz doesn't have Afromu, then he's not that successful.
Right, and that could be it. And you mentioned the whole, like, he used to be ahead of the meta, now he's not. Like, yeah, maybe he still thinks he can counterpick every matchup. And maybe he's actually right, and it's the players mismanaging. Like, it's hard to really say. Results-based analysis says they're losing more than they win, so there goes something's going wrong, and that's kind of true. But if he's like, no, this is the game we play Renekton. This is the week we practice Kled mid-funnel. And it's like, every week you're wrong.
What I will say is that I personally have a lot of faith in Zikz. I don't think that CLG was going in the right direction in the past 6 to 8 months. I think this roster and that coach should be successful. So something is missing there. Without knowing if it's particularly Zikz, I can't say. But to Azil's point, I think a lot of other teams should be inquiring about how they can get Zikz.
Zikz is going to get picked up. Almost guaranteed. I think that another team is going to want him. I would be shocked to not see him with like a head coach position going into next year. And I mean, about like, are they ahead of the meta anymore? Are they innovating? I don't know. But the way I saw this team is they had one of the best early games in the league, right? And the way that I see it, so coaches certainly can affect how you play the mid game, how you play the late game. They can affect all stages of the game. But where I have always seen like the coaches' impact is like most evident is often the early game, because that is where you can give the most direct pre-planning. That is where you can like know what is going to happen more accurately and like prepare your players with exactly what to do, right? And like CLG's early games have been fantastic. They have gotten leads consistently. At one point, they had gotten first blood like a tremendous amount of games in a row. I want to say like 7+ games.
The first
in a
9
row.
games of the split, they had
9 games in a row. So like these sorts of things, and I feel like if the players are then executing in mid game and late game with lead, like you should just be winning a higher percentage of those games. So to me, it seemed more like execution errors in the game. And again, you can always take it back to like, was it the chicken or the egg? Did he teach them nothing about the mid game? Did he not like, get rid of those bad habits? But at the end of the day, regardless of who the coach is, the players still have to be able to execute in the game. The players still have to be able to make decisions on the fly in the game. And that is where I have felt that CLG has always failed. Like in the last year, it always feels like, oh, your first couple minutes are super good. You have this great plan. You get a lead, and then you don't know what to do. And that has been CLG this whole year for me.
Yeah.
And I find it hard to pin that all on the coach because as much as you like inform players have to be really good at making in the moment decisions. And the point about Aframu, I think, is very valid because to me, Aframu has always seemed like an in-game coach, right?
Yeah.
So it's like if you can do all this pre-planning and get your team ahead and get them to draft and you know what they're supposed to do with it, and then have a guy in game who's like, all right, guys, this is what we do next now that we have lead, okay, Stixay, you lane swap top. Okay, like Huhi, you roam down bot with Darshan. Okay, like having the person who then understands the next steps and like is better able to analyze the game and understand where you have to go from there once it's kind of like off the rails is super important. And I think that every team needs that. Every team needs that guy who can be kind of an in-game coach, and maybe CLG just doesn't have that.
Separate discussion.
Yeah.
Unless you have a counter to that. With all of these coach moves, D-Lim, Zikz, the Golden Guardians changes.
Tyler, yeah.
And even an Arrow, even though he stepped down instead of getting fired was the messaging, are we more like traditional sports now where you see a lot of coaches on struggling teams just be the first ones to go?
Yeah.
Like, I've always read that as a lot of times coaches are an easy scapegoat and also just an easier thing to change than your players.
Sure.
I look at the LCS contract database, and most players are under contract until 2020 or 2019. But there's technically, since coaching is so underdeveloped, a lot of coaches available or a lot of different things to try. So if a team is struggling, they're just changing coaches. That's just the way it works now.
Yeah, and I think it is. There's probably like 3 or 4 points here. Coaches are harder to prove whether they're good or bad. Like until you work with them directly, you don't really know. Where it's like pretty easy to be like, well, this guy's stuck in Diamond 2. He's probably not that good because at a certain point, like there's a skill level that's like very easily measurable, right? When you're picking up talent, like we'll probably pick the guy who's top 50 challenger, not the guy who's Diamond 3, 70 LP.
Wins lane consistently.
Right. And it's like you can watch them play. You have match stats. There's a lot of things you can obviously do. And then when you work with a coach, you're like, okay, well, here's how he deals with interpersonal issues. Like I have zero idea how an Arrow deals with interpersonal issuers.
Yeah.
But I have a really good idea how Huni lanes, right? They've been on the same team for the last year, but I have a really like better idea of one of those guys. So players, I think, are a more known commodity in general. I think also top 10 players in a role are more scarce, right? Like there's exactly 10 players in the top 10 and they're all signed to teams right now. And the next 10 are on academy teams right now. So unless you want to buy someone out, whereas like there's probably a bunch of coaches that are pretty good that you've not seen yet.
I would contest that though. I actually think good coaches are more rare than top 10 players because name 10 coaches that you think are like really good right now. So I think we can all name 10 players that we think are really good right now.
Yeah, okay.
Well, he's saying per position.
So.
Yeah, I mean like replacing a support is, sort of ish as hard as replacing a coach, but also I think you can like know for sure Afro is like top 3 supports in NA, like for sure, like, and everyone's going to agree with you, and like he's going to shot call you to victory. And look, he made a final, and he's won some titles. And then it's like, okay, well, who's like the top 3 coaches in NA, like for sure? And you're like, I don't know. I like Zikz. I like Inero. I mean, like. Parth won some titles with TSM, but now he's a GM, and you're like, okay, cool. Who's garbage? You're like, I don't know, but there's a bunch of guys like chilling in academy, a bunch of guys who are analysts. Like, I think it's easy to turn over a coach and try. Is I guess what I'm going for, right? Like, I think you are less confident that like for sure Zikz is the truth and he's going to carry us. Where you're like, there's a bunch of guys out there that we can try out and see how they do, and that feels more doable. So if that makes sense.
I would agree from our point of view because we don't have we're not working with these guys day in day out, right? But like. From the perspective of people who work with the coaches on a daily basis, like I feel like you should have a really strong read of it, right? Like to your point, so I know more about Huni's laning than I do about an Arrow, but if you're on the team, you should know like hopefully an equal amount, right? But I do think that like good coaching has seemed exceptionally rare, and you know the comparison to traditional sports, right? Like the truly great coaches oftentimes are with a team for a really long time because they're like, okay, this guy's actually just godlike, right? And
I think it's kind of case in point. Is like if they're actually an amazing coach, you just keep them the whole time. And if
Yeah.
they're like a coach, you're like, well, it's not working, but we really want to keep Biofrost.
Yeah, I just think it's tough because to me, like there have not, like you're saying, there's less. The coaches are less proven at the top, is my interpretation of what you're saying.
Sure, okay.
So that you can get people who are maybe like maybe interchangeable, right?
Okay.
But I would also argue that there's like almost no proven coaches below either, right? Like there's people who have like no track record. It feels like it's a total crapshoot. Whereas at least Zikz has proven like, hey, I've won championships. Hey, we have made it to MSI finals. Yeah. And when you look on paper, to me, like CLG has never been the most talented team on paper, right? Like it's like they've worked well together. I felt like they've always had, smart like early games and those sort of things. Like the things that I measure for a coach's success feels like Zikz has checked those boxes to me. Whereas like, can we say that we think Reignover has been like a top level jungler? Like when we think about coming into this year, that signing for CLG was supposed to be like the biggest ticket signing, right? This is supposed to be like the godlike jungler who's going to take like, fill maybe Afromu's shoes, as kind of the shot caller and all this stuff. And that didn't work for me. Like Reignover has had very few super impressive games the whole year.
Sure.
I think.
No, I actually agree that Reignover's not been super impressive. I'm trying to think back of like old CLG history rosters, right? And it's like they've had double from Afromu, like they've had sticks in. Like Afro's one that got them their championships, right? Like you talk about CLG not always having the most skill, but like they had Xmithy and Afro on the same team before. Like those guys are like at their peaks best in role, period. Right? They've had Doublelift in there before, and Stixxay at his peak was probably top 3, like when he was doing really, really well. And like Powelter is like, I think the joke is always top 10 NA, but like he's always been like a upper echelon LCS caliber mid laner, even if he's not like winning stuff at Worlds.
I'm not
like,
trying to say they're bad or anything.
I know, but it's like
MSI finals, right? Like
right, yeah.
The story to me was always like, oh, like who he can never cut it internationally. Darshan's garbage compared to these tops, like like Stixxay's just a Kayla one trick, like all this sort of stuff, like
right,
but yet they had the most success ever internationally, like compared to like a TSM roster or like the TL like super team and this sort of stuff.
I feel like it's just going down a bit of a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Are you saying that they were successful at MSI because of Zikz or because of the roster? Like, what's the
because I think that Zikz has had a huge impact on this team for a number of years, right? Like to me, he is a proven commodity, which is why changing him out when I don't feel there are a lot of proven commodities in coaching is very detrimental to the team's future. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, end of the day, like I don't know if there's much we can say about CLG anymore. Like it's a lot of conjecture and inner workings we don't know. As far as talking about like things like Golden Guardians, I'm excited seeing Anero working again. I always liked what he was trying to do with like.
And he's also a consultant for an OPL team as well. So I'm really finding it difficult to understand like what impact he is going to have on teams. I just know that the league is moving in a direction that does have more coaching changes. I like the fact that we can debate whether or not a coach is successful or what the value of a coach is. I think that's an interesting problem. My opinion right now is that I'm shocked to see Zikz because he's been on COG for so long, but I do recognize that
they're in 7th.
COG's blame, a lot of that falls on Zikz, in my opinion. This split. It doesn't matter what he did in 2016. It doesn't matter what he did in 2017. What matters is what he's done in the last 8 months, and I don't think that's been great.
Yeah. Faker and Bang won a bunch of championships. They missed playoffs this time. Like, and Koma's been there the whole time.
And SKT's going to have, I mean, you can also argue that Koma's done a bad job this split.
And that can happen, right? Like, Koma's the winningest coach in all time, and yet he's coached the best team in the history of the world to 7th place LCK. Yeah. I'm not saying it's his fault, but like it's happened.
Yeah.
Different roster though.
I want to get
sure, but like as the coach, he has roster like say. And again, like this gets into a giant can of worms and it's a rabbit hole I don't get into, but like it happened and Koma's been at the lead of all of it.
Yeah. I want to get a coach on the show at some point. So if any coaches listen to this, send us messages if you would like to come talk about coaching because I think it's a very interesting topic.
We were supposed to have a coach, but then the coach got busy.
One of the coaches got busy. We're not going to say who it was, but
an unnamed coach.
You know who you are. Let's move on to the meta discussion. There was a post this morning. We're filming this at 11:12 a.m. is the current time. But it was a post from Riot Scruffy going over some of the changes over the next couple months to be introduced into the game. Talked a little bit about what the failure to preseason was, how they, well, first off, he said in the short term, they're going to be reducing the damage of some of the runes because some of the one-shot builds that come up, like the Electrocute Stormrazor Duskblade, just kind of exceeds the level of acceptable burst and doesn't really give room to counterplay. That's one problem. I don't think that's a big problem in Pro, but it's a big problem in solo queue. Another thing they talked about is just what happened with the marksman changes in general is they underestimated how much early game agency those marksmen had lost, and therefore have tried to put a little bit of that back in the game, since the expectation of playing a marksman is very real for a large percentage of players. And that's what the current patch is aiming to do with patch 8.15, is actually nerfing some of late game power, giving a lot of early game power. From a pro play perspective, my opinion is that just makes marksman dominant again.
Yeah.
And then they talk a little bit about preseason stuff, which you can read and check out on your own. We don't necessarily discuss that now. What are your thoughts on the immediate implications of this post?
So I mean, I've seen the patch notes on PvE at least about like nerfing early rune stuff. They're
Which
pretty
would
much,
be 8.16.
Yeah, which will be coming on live in about a week if you're hearing this, and it'll be in pro play for most playoff patches. Most playoff patches, not all of them. Like NA and EU, that should be playoff patch. Yeah, and it's like 5 damage off Scorch level 1. It turns Electrocute back into Thunderlord's Decree, basically. Like half the damage, have a cheap shot at early ranks. And yeah, I agree. Like the idea that I've like taken to Reddit is like MR did not get lower because people were running like only 3 MR glyphs anyway, and no one gets Magic Pen. Like the overall like runes reforged change did not change magic resist in the game in many meaningful ways.
Right.
But yes, there's a bunch of runes that showed up that added a bunch of damage. And I think a lot of those have crept up over time as well. Ratios get increased once in a while, and people start finding optimizations. And so, yeah, good to see burst going down. I mean, I normally play squishy classes, and I like playing assassins too. Like I'm a Mastery 7 Yasuo, for example. But yeah, I mean, I'm good to see that like there is like a time to kill that feels fair in League of Legends, and that I think we are too short.
Yeah, it's interesting because like I know this has been a big topic of discussion recently, and the most kind of, I don't know, the time I started hearing about it the most was after Ascara's video and him kind of talking about burst being too high and these sorts of things, and a lot of people started talking about it. And it's interesting because, you know, when I think back to previous years of playing League, I don't feel like damage is higher now, but maybe I'm just not seeing it. Like when I think back when I started playing, and they're you know, DFG being around there, and AP Gragas one comboing me, and like Talon. I used to play a ton of Talon when the E silenced, and I would consistently, if I was having a good game, kill the marksman before they could flash or heal or do anything. Like I felt like there was a lot of one-shot old Rengar that, like, you know, would be able to actually like team mad and do your combo in the air. Like there was a lot of characters that were just insta-killing you. Old LeBlanc would just be sitting in a bush. If they're having a good game, you walk through, you just get one shot. Like there's a lot of champions that definitely did that. Maybe it is something where it's like champions that you do not expect to deal that much damage are now able to because of the layering of procs.
Here's something.
But I've always felt like I get one shot when someone's having a good game on certain champions.
Yeah, I think that's true. But I'll bring up the example of like a pre-nerf Wukong with a Duskblade and a Stormrazor. He kills you with E auto Q.
Yeah.
He doesn't even have to press his ultimate. Like the older champions, while they would have that one-shot potential, it's like they use their entire kit to get that. Whereas sometimes Wukong can do it on a 10-second cooldown if he gets fed. Right? That's just one example with that specific combo of abilities.
Yeah, there's some synergies that are really good because he's got like the get lethality when you dash rune as well. Sudden impact, which is like, oh, also like I have a free brutalizer because the game. So yeah, I think there are some, and I actually agree, right? Like old AP Gragas, like go watch montages and stuff. Like that champion was nuts.
Well, and for what it's worth, all of those one-shot champions got nerfed. So like by no means is like, oh, well, because these things existed in the past, therefore they're okay now.
No. My point is just that like it feels like at all stages of my playing League, and I've played for like
there's been something
4 years very seriously now. I've always felt like that guy one-shots me, and that guy has changed, but there's always that guy, and he's going to one-shot you if he's having a good game. And now that's Fizz, right? Like now that's a lot of champions, but like there's always like, oh, well, Zed's having a good game. I guess if he autos me in Qs, I die from full, right? But yeah, I mean, I think that it's the stacking of like, you know, they point out in the post, it's not uncommon to see Scorch, Electrocute, Duskblade, Stormrazor used together, right? Like everything stacking, and I've definitely seen that. You know, I played against a Jhin recently that was doing, it was like, I think it was Dark Harvest Jhin, so it was like Dark Harvest, and then he had like Stormrazor, Rapid Fire, Duskblade, and he just one auto you out of a bush. You lose like 80% of your health if you're a squishy on his first auto, and it's like, wait, what?
I played a game last night of Dark Harvest Lethality MF, and there was an Akali who was doing like AP Akali, the Shroud Akali. No, she would like run, and she would gun at 20% before she could turn invisible, and then like our like Malzahar just like hits Q and she just dies in her Shroud because I did literally 900 on the first auto because Love Tap plus 300 AD plus Duskblade plus Dark Harvest, and it was like, yeah, it's a little BS. It's like not even critting, it's just all front loaded.
Yeah. How do you think this is going to impact pro play, not only in 8.15, but 8.16? The split started off with a ton of funnel strategies. Those are gone with a bunch of mages bought.
Feels like it just makes the game slower, to be honest.
Okay.
I just think you just go, crit marksmen have been getting buffed. You look at win rates, Jinx and Twitch and these champions are like some of the highest win rates. They're just better in 8.15. Well, now I can't one-shot them as easily because all my like procs have been nerfed.
And I play Janna and Nami.
Let's play some Janna and Nami, and let's go to 50 minutes, and we'll have my 6-item Jinx. Good luck, right? And that's where I feel like the game is heading. Every time you're nerfing like burst and you're buffing marksman, well, then I just want to get greedier and greedier and greedier and play the scaling guy and beat you late, which feels like it's not Ardent Sensor meta, but it feels like more that direction. Tanks come back in when you have marksman as well, because you have to now protect that Jinx and give him space.
So I think tanks were kind of in anyway. I think zero tank teams were never going to be good regardless. But in contrasting like our sort of projection of 8.16 meta compared to like last year's Worlds, I think it is less marksman heavy or less marksman required than there, because the big example being Death Cap is a lot stronger in this year than last year. Like that item is massively buffed, and I think it's part of the reason damage is so high. Like my big theory on why damage is going up, and I think it has, is I think items got more efficient, and Death Cap being a very obvious example of that. Where like Cassiopeia will have more AP in 2018 than she did in 2017. Archangels is better, Death Cap's better. Like she is a stronger champion, period. And these kind of things. So like if you're like, yeah, we're playing John and Nami, it's like, cool, you're gonna die to a single shockwave. And like if you land that, right? And so like some of that kind of play is there of playing a burst mage, because that's still going to be there for the most part.
Yeah, I do think that this will advantage the teams that were good last year, and I will agree that it is still, I think it's still possible to play the other way. If you end up actually getting into that greeting arms race of the late game carry with a bunch of protection, someone who's really good at a Swain Fiddle bot lane can still beat you.
And Jace top.
Right? And Jace top. Like, they can still just pressure you out and crush you. I am mostly certain there will be certain teams that go to Worlds who are going to be willing to try that. Like, I don't even know if Fnatic is going to put Reckless back in. Even though this is actually the time to do it, because they've actually gotten pretty good at playing with the Mage's bot. And objectively, they're decent. And it makes them so hard to prepare for, right? Just having that. Even if they do bring Reckless back, to be able to put Whipple in like pretty frequently, I think gives them that competitive edge, which would be pretty cool. So I'm personally like a little bit blasé about what's happened this split with like funnel into Mage's bot into now. Well, only some of the time those are going to be good, and you can't do funnel anymore, and it's mostly what the game was previously. Like, I'm sure pro teams are actually pretty happy about it because it gives them a level of stability at this point. They're happy with what's happened at patch 8.15 and 8.16. They're not happy about the track record of this summer split, because I feel like a lot of the growth that you could have done in the split is like patched out of the game, right? By this point.
A couple things I want to sort of walk back a little bit. So I played a game last night. It was against like some Diamond 1 guy who was doing Smite mid Xayah and just did like Doran's Blade opener, built double longsword, and then like on his third back like built warrior, and then tried to self funnel from there on. Right.
So he didn't jungle for the early laning phase.
Or maybe he did Raptors at 1, but who cares?
Because he's losing like half the experience.
He took the big Raptor, smote it, whatever it was. But like then he tried to be Funnel's Eye. And we won the game because like we were winning everywhere else, but like seemed reasonably effective, and like it wasn't that hard to do that and like try to do self-funneling that way. So I think like we talked about it last time, where you can probably find other ways to do funneling. I think that can still happen. Also, from what I saw, and maybe I'm misreading things, like I don't think marksman got buffed that hard. Like they got, like the goal was to have feel positive power neutral changes to marksman, where you feel better because your items come online sooner, but their efficiency for the most part went down. Like Infinity Edge is less gold efficient than before, and Storm Razor is less gold efficient than before, but it comes online 400 gold cheaper, so you can multiply sooner, and like some of that can be valuable, but the power is roughly neutral. Like again, plus or minus 1% or so, but like this is not something like, oh my god, suddenly they're deleted from the game. No. Talking about Vladimir, and that's all I want to bring up.
Here's what I will say: Vladimir, Swain, Ryze, Heimer, all playable bottom lane.
I agree.
But when Stormrazor is 300 or 400 gold cheaper, and you get there before the opponent gets Ludens, that's really important for pro.
Sure.
Right? Like that is less important for a solo queue game where gold and item timings are less important. But that level of change to hit, i.e. Stormrazor Zeal item.
Right.
what is it, 1,000 gold, 800 gold?
700, I think it is. I think it's 400, 200, 100.
700 gold sooner, not having a second BF in your IE, even if you were actually only 85% of what the old thing was, and efficiency-wise, that doesn't matter. That's still better for pro because of when the game is decided.
Yeah,
and I think that's why we're going to see so many marks.
And there's not that many games where you get full 6 items anyway, right? Whereas I think where the efficiency really hurts. But and my point is not because I think, oh, all other strategies are deleted from the game, this is the only way to play. My thought is, generally speaking, pros default to normalcy.
Of course they do.
I have played 8 years of Marksman. I've played a couple weeks of Vladimir. All right, Marksmen are seeming a little bit better now. Goodbye, Vladimir. I'm never playing you again, right? And like we've seen that, like even like you pointed out last year at Worlds, we did see some of the Chinese teams bring out like Caitlyn Jace and eventually kind of disrupt the meta a bit. Like if you go super hardcore late game, then we bring it back to early game and we just slam you before you get there. And I think that should exist. I hope that enough teams do that it doesn't just become this handshake of we're going late every game.
Yeah.
But my concern is that so many teams will default to normalcy. So many teams will default to what is like the most obvious strategy that you will have a high percentage of games that are just going to be long games scaling for late, but can be disrupted by teams that are willing to go all early, and I hope that's still there.
And that's up to your players and your coach. Like I think of Worlds 2 years ago where the Koreans held Zyra support back. Like Albus Nox was known for being like their support was a Zyra brand 2-trick, and he didn't play Zyra because he didn't think it was good the entire time. It was left up in more than half his games. And then quarterfinals roll around, and every Korean team is like, by the way, Zyra's the best support. You guys are all idiots.
And then
they play Zyra every
semifinals,
game.
you brought out
In
MF.
semifinals, Rox Tigers knew you could play MF Ashe, and SKT played into it twice before they just banned the champion away. And like, so there's some degree of like, okay, we know we're going to save it till it matters, and then the next level of we know we're going to save it till it matters. And like, that's up again to the teams to find it out. And you're absolutely right.
Moving on to North American LCS, unless you guys have more meta points
let's
to
go.
talk
I'm
about. We have actually a little bit of separation in the standings.
Yep.
If you can believe it. Team Liquid is 10-4
Yeah.
after being 6-4 at one point. Cloud9 is tied for 4th.
Yep.
So is FlyQuest and Optic. We have a lot of stuff to talk about. First up is Echo Fox versus 100 Thieves. That's going to be the first game on the next part of the weekend.
Yep.
Just what do you think about the league in general, about the separation that we've been seeing, and also about the Echo Fox 100 Thieves matchup?
I kind of liked when every team was tied with each other, because like we're at a point now where we're like, well, CLG is depressing and Golden Guardians is depressing, and I guess they're kind of out, and like they're not mathematically out yet, but it's getting really close. 2 or so teams can lock playoffs by the end of the first day next week, in a couple days here, and so you start saying, okay, well, they're for sure in, and then it's like, well, okay, they're battling for first, and you know, if they win 2 more games, then they're guaranteed the bye, and like it's a little bit less exciting to cast them. But I do think it's good though that as we're gearing up for international, that it's like, okay, Liquid seem to have their stuff together, like they've risen above the top, they have definitely gotten cleaner, like. And you still think of like Rift Rivals where they went kind of poorly, but you're like, all right, are we ready to like get behind these teams that are performing better?
Yeah, and I guess the question for me then, if you're looking forward, is like, did Liquid actually get better since MSI, or actually get better since Rift Rivals? And that's a harder one to answer. But as far as the way that it has kind of all split out, I mean, it ends up being the top 3 teams from last split are the top 3 teams again. So I guess they just were the best teams, right? And they've kind of remained so.
Well, let's talk about the Liquid thing.
Yeah.
I like that question.
Okay.
Are they better now than they were in spring? And I'd say at this point they are better.
Okay.
Because I thought that in spring split, actually, at the end of week 7, we were wondering if they were ever going to be able to turn it on. And we had like Steve on the lounge stream saying, oh, I just did everything I could to put this roster together and none of it's clicking. Now they have a better record at this point than they did previously. They're on a win streak. I don't think there's any questions about what type of team they should be. The patch is moving in their favor. For the last 2 weeks, Doublelift and Ole have looked good together.
They have.
Pobelter is again having some of those carry performances that he had at the beginning of spring.
Malzahar.
Malzahar, Syndra. What other champions have a really strong
Point and
ultimate?
click our people,
But laning phase, like, don't undersell what Pobelter's been doing. I think they are better right now than they were at this point in spring.
So, I definitely, when you put it in those terms, I agree overall. My concern for them internationally is that, yes, Pobelter is looking good here at MSI. He was struggling. At Rift Rivals, felt like he was kind of struggling too. And I feel like it's been shown enough times that Pobelter really does struggle internationally. Like, and maybe the fact that he didn't do that well at MSI and didn't do that well, Rift Rivals and all these things will just mean that he's just going to be on Malzahar duty from the word go at international play. And I think that is totally fine.
That is the right choice for Team Liquid.
That's exactly. Like,
100% of the time.
I really think that is the way you want to play it, right? Like maybe he's like a Morgana, Malzahar, Karma guy at Worlds, right?
Yep.
And maybe he can play Yasuo and Aurelia in NA and slam everyone, but when he's playing the best in the world, then he shouldn't do that, right? And if they have learned from that and they cater their strategies around that, that's totally fine. You can have guys who are like a losing lane, but are playing a champion that like fits well into the rest of the composition and is going to have good utility. Tank players have done that top lane for so long.
I mean, have you met Samsung Galaxy and their mid laner Crown, who is a Malzahar one trick against Faker, lost lane really hard, and then 3-0'd SKT in the finals?
Have you met Fly, who is the new starter for that team?
Yeah. But like, right, that has been proven to work. Just kind of like understand that, right? Is like, yes, you can just be a Mal's Tom Kench 2 trick or whatever, and like that's okay.
Tom
like
Kench made baby, let's go.
But people should role play like in a competitive environment. Like if you're the weaker mid laner, play a lower variance mid laner. Period. And like you have Devilf in your team, like let that guy play, Vayne or Kai'Sa every game, support him, and then don't be the point that loses because he'll do what you need.
Yeah, and I think as long as that strategy works and as long as they are bought into that strategy, then I think it's going to be great, right? If we get to MSI and it's all, or like into Worlds and it's all about carry mids and supportive ADs and stuff, then it's like, ooh, that's unlucky. But that's kind of where my question lies.
Let's talk about TSM and COG.
Okay.
Because we got the TSM COG matchup coming up.
We always go to these teams in the dot.
Yeah, 6-8 TSM.
What about Cloud9?
Who's one game out of the playoffs. We'll talk about Cloud9. Okay. Don't worry about that. With the bet that we have. And COG...
Never mind, we're good.
And COG is 5-9. Technically, both these teams can still make playoffs. They have to play against each other. Both these teams have fallen from grace. Zikz has been let go. By the way, I got confirmation that coaches are not impacted by roster lock, so Zikz could actually sign as a head coach somewhere else.
Okay. He could just be on stage this
week.
He
could actually go to TSM and
just coach against them
That would be hilarious.
I would love
that. Could actually happen. I mean, it depends on if COG and him have like the contract worked out. Like that's all stuff that isn't like officially decided by league rules. But
in our world, he could be coaching TSM.
He could be coaching SKT to Worlds.
That's what they need. Zikz goes to Korea, coaches Faker to Worlds,
and they run it all the way up.
Yeah,
that'll show you CLG.
All right, CLG TSM. Let's go.
All right, a couple things to talk about. Are both of these teams dead, or do you see a light at the end of the tunnel for either of these teams? It obviously starts in the matchup between TSM and COG. Like I think the loser is dead.
Boom.
Like TSM goes to 9 losses, COG goes to 10. Yeah. But COG's schedule is actually pretty easy in the last 4 games. There's a chance they just end 9-9 if they actually turn it around after their 6-game losing streak.
I feel like
I don't see it.
Yeah, I don't see it either, especially with like the coaching disruption. I think that is potentially pretty tough to deal with.
Yeah. Because I think even sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I mean, with TSM, you still like there's still that thing in the back of your head that's like, but maybe if they get it together though, right? Because they still on paper have all these talented players, so like still just by pure individual player skill, if I was to bet on one of those two teams, it would be TSM. But I mean, it's been how long now? It's 7 weeks of NA LCS, and they still haven't really gotten it together. So like, I feel like they're both like not in the best spot. But I also think that it's not unreasonable to say that like FlyQuest or whoever could slip down a little bit, Optic could slip down a little bit. So like, I would bet on TSM over CLG. CLG seems pretty dead in the water to me.
I definitely would as well. I mean, TSM can make playoffs. I don't think they like make the run to Worlds. Like if they make playoffs, they almost certainly make regional qualifier because they'll have 30 championship points. That'll put them above like Optic or FlyQuest, who might maybe get 6th and drop out as well. So like, but I feel like they lose every best of 5 they play the rest of this year. I think they can make 6. Like I can see Optic or FlyQuest dropping, and like that game difference is caught by TSM. I think that's totally reasonable. In fact, I would bet even odds that happens for TSM, and I would take the TSM side of that one.
Yeah, I would be surprised if FlyQuest and Optic both made playoffs.
Yeah,
I think one of them will make playoffs, but the fact that there's only 1 game separating them from TSM, 2 games separating from COG and Clutch, and even Golden Guardians, like with how topsy-turvy the split has been, a 1 to 2 game lead, even with 4 games to go, is just too much. Like I think there's going to be enough variance to pull them out of that.
Yeah, Saturday alone, right? TSM beats CLG, Liquid beats Optic. That sounds like a reasonable thing that could happen.
Yep.
They're now tied in standings.
Yep.
Right? Like, it doesn't take that much.
Yeah.
You know, FlyQuest is playing Clutch, which is maybe a bit of an easier schedule, but, like, there is obviously strength of schedule starts to matter a lot at this point. But, I mean, Optic has Liquid, then Echo Fox this weekend, right?
Yeah.
Probably the two hardest or two of the hardest.
I'd say right
teams
now those are the
remaining.
two hardest.
Yeah, I think those are top
Yeah,
two.
and then next week, Optic has TSM, right? So like TSM's fate is still fully in their hands. And then Optic has 100 Thieves. Optic literally has the hardest possible schedule. Essentially, 3 of their last 4 games are against the top 3 teams, and they have to play TSM.
And then their main competitor.
So I mean, if TSM wants to get to playoffs, that is a very clear path, right? Like it's fully in their control. So I think you can build some kind of confidence from that. But yeah, I mean, it's not guaranteed, but it's going to be really tough for Optic with that schedule.
All right. The way too early. Give maybe a few examples, but we don't want to spend too long on this.
Okay.
Just what is your playoff seeding? Who gets the buys and who makes it in as the other 4 teams? I'll start.
Okay.
I think Team Liquid and Echo Fox.
Yep.
I'm being real controversial here.
Wow. Top 2
we'll
teams.
get the buys. I think
We all agree.
Echo Fox got a huge
same.
ceiling. That was easy. Then 100 Thieves makes it in, Cloud9 makes it in, TSM makes it in, and FlyQuest makes it in.
Yep.
That's my prediction.
Now, the real question then is the seeding among them. Because C9, I think, are only 1 behind 100 Thieves.
They are 2 behind 100 Thieves.
Okay, so then, yeah, that's just like 1, 2, 3. C9 is 4. And then TSM versus FlyQuest for 5, 6. I'd probably take FlyQuest because they have that 1 game lead right now as 5. And then there you go. Oh, that said, like, FlyQuest still have like the worst stats yet a good record. So maybe we're overrating them as well. I know you went through Optic's schedule, and so I kind of agree that
So FlyQuest plays Clutch, CLG,
Yeah, so that's a win.
Golden Guardians,
Okay, yeah, so-
and Cloud9. They just have a way easier.
Okay, so yeah, I think they stay ahead of TSM then. I think TSM
Yeah.
are probably can drop at least 1 game, and then FlyQuest just keeps their lead over them. So yeah, that's 5, 6 is FlyQuest then TSM.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat. I think.
Do you take TSM under 100 Thieves afterwards?
Pardon?
Do you take TSM under 100 Thieves in that case? 100 Thieves are
as
maybe
far
the
as
weakest.
how the quarterfinals goes.
Yeah, if like that's your seeding, if you're going to agree with that.
Yeah, I would bet on the 100 Thieves beating them in a best of 5. I have a lot of faith, though. I think in Cloud9, I'm building a lot of faith in that roster. Also have been getting a lot of faith in Echo Fox. Those are the 2 that like I'm the most bought into. Like their kind of like rising success. I mean, Echo Fox already had a good first half, but I feel like that team has gotten better with the changes.
I agree.
And I feel like Cloud9 has looked on such a tear in the second half that like. Yes, I think it's going to be 1-2 of the current teams, right? Like Liquid and Echo Fox are going to be up there, but I don't think that they are going to be clear in a way the best teams. I just think that they are good and they have a standing lead. But like Cloud9 versus one of those teams, if Cloud9 is like the real deal and continue on this form, hey, like that could be a really, really crazy match. So I think that it's exciting for me to think that I think there's at least like 4 teams that could be super competitive.
Yeah.
I don't see FlyQuest, like making the run to the championship. I don't see TSM in this form making the run to the championship. But Cloud9, 100 Thieves, Echo Fox, or TL,
Yeah.
I could see any of those teams win.
Yeah. I just want to spend a moment to give some props to Cloud9 in the second half of the season.
Yeah.
And talk a little bit about why I think they're succeeding. So I think Licorice in particular has been playing amazingly. Like when people talk about Someday on 100 Thieves being like by far the best top laner in the league, I think performance-wise, Licorice, you could argue, is right behind him. His early game laning stats, he's putting up bigger leads than Someday, and then a lot of his wins have been brought down when the rest of the team just has like no type of late game team competition, and they lost a lot of those games early. But he has been really stepping up. A lot of praise has been going to Blabber since he came in and Svenskeren has gone out. I think they're either 4-1 or 5-1.
Yeah, I think it's 5-1 because it was just the 3 weeks.
But I think within that Jensen is a large reason why he is successful. He backs Blabber up extremely well when playing in the mid lane, being able to play picks like Zilean, which no one else does. Like the freedom that Zilean gives a Kindred is insane. Like,
Do anything you want.
when they got Baron in their last game last week, and Blabber just jumps into the base with a turret in his face and just starts shooting people and puts his Kindred ult down. It doesn't matter that he did that, because as soon as the Kindred ult heal comes through, Jensen puts a Zilean ultimate on. Like, it's free at that point. So
It's free.
and Jensen got to that point because he's able to do the laning phase in the mid game and all that stuff on Zillion, which is really hard that other teams aren't able to do. And even though Sneaky has actually been weak in the laning phase, I don't think Sneaky and Zeyzal have been that good in lane. You're really seeing the team fighting of Sneaky come through strong.
Yep.
That's where he's actually been strongest. So those are the reasons why I think Cloud9 has been working lately. And I wanted to call that out because they're 7-7 after starting 1-5.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked Reaper's interview. He talked about kind of the different role that Jensen has stepped into, and I think it's cool. Like, Jensen has been this lane dominant guy for so long, has been, you know, one of the best mid laners mechanically in the world for a long time, right? Like, he's this incredible player, and I feel like there's like a lot of kind of maturing that has gone on with him. That he, like, you know, he feels happy to step into this second role where it's like, yes, he is more enabling his jungler, right? And Reaper talked about, hey, he has been kind of like the guy to play the more supportive stuff so Blabber can play aggressive, and that works for the team. And instead of having, you know, like Sven just try to hard camp for Jensen and Jensen carries, right? He has the double Zillion games, 3 Orianna games, and a Lulu game out of his 6 games, right? Like, those are all fairly kind of like supportive style champions. Yes, they obviously can still carry games, but it's cool to see like a kind of a different side from Jensen and see that they have found this strategy that is working well for them, and obviously a lot of faith in Blabber. And it's been pretty cool to see like how aggressively he is actually willing to play. I remember after the first week, he said, hey, you know, I'm kind of disappointed in how I've played. I don't feel like I'm playing as aggressively as I do in scrims. And you're like, okay, yeah, whatever. People say this stuff all the time. Next week, he's playing Kindred. He's just like, he's initiating on Kindred by like hopping forward and shooting his little bow. And I'm like, well, this guy's a madman. And then they're winning. I'm like, okay, I feel it.
Yep.
So pretty cool stuff from them. And yeah, I mean, Cloud9 just looking really good. It seems like, despite all the roster shakeups, despite all the craziness, despite all the drama, the kind of loss of faith in the C9 org from a lot of the fans, at the end of the day, feels like they kind of figured it out. So that's very impressive. Like, it was certainly not an easy road.
Yeah. We set up the fall really well now after all of this because the schedule's actually not that easy. And
they couldn't possibly miss out on playoffs, chat.
I see what you're doing, Azale.
There is no way that they could ever miss playoffs.
By the way, for those of you who don't watch every week, Azale and I made a bet when C9 was 1-5. I said they would make playoffs.
I feel like they have more wins than that, but maybe they was 1-5.
They were 1-5, and you're like, there's no way.
That's a good bet.
Yeah, they were. Yeah,
and I was like, are you sure about that? You were like, no.
I would have been on your side of that bet as well.
Yeah, it was a good bet.
Yeah.
Not if you lose.
I got outdumbed. You took a bad bet.
Yeah. Moving on to Twitter.
Who would have thought they had like these really good players like Jensen and Sneaky on the bench?
It's like the no dodge dodge. You can't account for that.
Great.
All right.
Okay.
Moving on to Twitter. Eric N. Lefrigue or Desmonde says, @RightKobe, @RightAzale, @RightJat.
Okay.
For some reason, he's not asking Phreak this question.
Nope. Who would?
What singular change do you think would be the best/most fun for the current meta in LCS? Rebuffing crit items, making Baron tougher again, baby home guards pre-20 minutes, removing Zoe from the game, etc. Put your amateur game designer hat on.
All right.
And then if you're a game designer, like turn off the stream because you probably don't want to
I'm
hear this,
ready.
but for the rest of it, just...
I'm ready. My suggestion, too disruptive for middle of the season. However,
would be fun.
teleport starts the game on a 6-minute cooldown.
Oh, you're talking about this.
And you revert. Yeah, I brought it up internally as well. And the designers were like, not for the middle of the season, too disruptive. But yeah, you bring back some of the cool nerfs, but you're like, hey, this is no longer the win lane for free summoner spell. Also, you cannot gank bot for free summoner spell. You can play your own laning phase. It is less disrupted. If you get your one-on-one kill, they have to walk back to lane like a regular person. And you get to actually like get your victories. And then, okay, if you want to play mid-game TP, that's fine. But it's not the win lane summoner spell as well as the map control summoner spell. What's interesting is Teleport on live has like a lower win rate than other summoners for
By a
most
lot.
roles. Like Ignite Garen is like 2.5% higher in top lane. Like Darius Ghost is 2.5% higher. Like even like Heimerdinger bot lane, heal is still better, like statistically in like ranked games. And so Pro obviously over indexes on, and probably correctly so, on like making sure your laning phase goes okay and you're not the point of failure. But yeah, you turn off TP for the first 6 minutes and suddenly the game, I think, plays out more fairly.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, for me, every time I hear people talk about like taking TP out, I'm just like, yeah, then I just never want to play top lane again, and that's fine. But because it's not about the 1v1. Like I'm totally fine if it's like sweet, okay, put that in, and now there's like an invisible wall where the jungle's not allowed to come, right? Like then sweet, I'm fully all on board. Ignite versus Ignite, less 1v1. Let's see who the better top laner is. But to me, anytime I hear TP's out, then I hear, oh sweet, it's about the jungler, right? Because I got 2v1'd. Even if you don't kill me and you do a bad gank, Kindred just walks in at level 2 and starts shooting me. I now have to base. The wave gets pushed into my turret. I'm now down a level. My lane is lost, right? Yeah. And that feels so bad that it's completely out of your hands. So
yeah, I would want to add like top lane mini home guards.
Yeah,
like top lane like tier inhibitor and tier 2 turret gives you a 50% move speed haste for 3 seconds, just so you can like resuscitate that.
Yeah, and maybe something like that would make it cool. It's tough right now. The most fun change.
I'm on the teleport mindset right now. I still like Meteo's suggestion of making it uncancelable.
Okay.
Actually move it back to a 5-minute cooldown, but just you're not allowed to cancel it.
Then people just only TP to turrets, which is fine.
Still a nerf.
Yeah.
Then it's still not able to...
My bot lane's not a 2v4 anymore.
Fights everywhere on the map.
Add Blink Dagger, man. That would be really fun. I don't know if any of you guys played much Dota, but like if we're just talking about fun change, not anything to do with like balance or anything, because there would be a million implications. But Blink Dagger is such a fun item to play with in Dota because it's like give you so much playmaking. So oh my god, like I'm just immediately thinking of like, I would be playing Moby Boots, Blink Dagger, Alistar, right? And just like running around and just like Blink Dagger flash combo from a mile away, right? That stuff I think is just super fun. So that'd be pretty exciting, but probably terrible for the game.
Yeah, T-Bird USA asks, the past 3 years I had hope for the NA LCS at Worlds based on the results and the teams we were sending. They underperformed each time. This year I have a little hope for NA based on split results and the teams we are likely sending. Does that mean they'll do well?
Yes.
Yes.
Next question.
That's actually the correct way to do it.
That is the correct way to do it. Blind faith every year.
I think I need to give this answer because I think about it a lot.
Okay.
I think that you look at the way that NA has actually failed, and it's usually right at the end.
Yeah.
Like legitimately, they'll
That's how failure always works.
No.
Then you stop playing.
You could fail like a 1-5 team in group stage, or 0-6 team in group stage, but NA fails as a 3-3 team in group
Okay, you're right.
Pretty consistent.
We lose every tiebreaker ever.
Yes, we do.
We literally lose every tiebreaker ever. And that is a problem in itself. And ultimately what matters is the actual results. But I would say that's why people remain hopeful. And that's why we can say we're blindly hopeful.
It's so close.
There's some informed hopefulness in the fact that they can win games on the international stage. They've just never been able to string it together. So I think there's always a chance a couple teams get a little farther than they did last time.
And also, yes.
Yes.
And also, yes. Mark Prinkits, question mark 22. What do you think should be done either by teams or by Riot to make side selection less important? This last week, Blue Side won 9 out of 10 games, with the only red side win being Echo Fox versus COG. Some other stats to back that up. I believe NA LCS is about 62% blue side win. EU LCS is similar. However,
LPL.
The LPL, who plays far fewer games, has a
Far more games.
49% win rate for blue side. Yeah. It's not absolutely the other way, but it is a little bit more towards centered. I still think blue side is favored, but what do you guys think?
So I've thought about this a lot. I mean, a lot of it is like the actual geography of the map. If you're baiting around Baron, blue side is advantage, these sorts of things. Yep. But I think that, so you can do some different things. Like you can just try to like make sure that you're nerfing OPs more quickly, right? Like the super ultra OPs that are just super high percentage ban rate. If you knock some of those down, like so like Aatrox and Zoe and Nocturne, if those all took a nerf, then hey, like it's probably a little bit more balanced there. But in general, I feel like the extreme imbalance in NA in particular is because we are actually so bad, or our teams are so bad at counterpicking lanes, at actually picking 4 lane and dominating in lane. And that's something that I think is the reason that LPL is actually having a much higher win rate on the red side. On red side, you get 2 counterpicks. You can counterpick both solo lanes. And if your solo laners are very good, can play a bunch of different champions and actually establish a lead and carry that throughout the rest of the game, that has a huge advantage. How many times can you guys think throughout this split that you have seen, all right, sick, Golden Guardians, last pick for the red side. What's it going to be? The Jace is blind picked. Okay, it's Mundo, right? Like,
yeah.
Oh, it's Ornn. okay, they're just going to pick like, oh, a support pick is for last. All right, Tom Kench, right? Like how many times have we seen that? And I feel like that is so consistent that teams on blue side are literally pre-counter picking the red side teams because their teams are so inflexible. It's like people do this against Team Liquid all the time. They're like, all right, I'm going to ban out like Gnar or something, and I'm going to pick GP, and Impact's going to pick a tank. Okay, Impact pick your tank, right? And now I have a good matchup. And that, even for our best teams, is something that people do so consistently. So like, you are given this advantage to slam lane. You self-counterpick yourself on red side, and then you're like, well, why does red side suck?
Yep. And there's one other thing as well. So I agree with everything you said, by the way, that both in geography and in terms of bad counterpicks. The only time I've looked into bad bans was in the height of LeBlanc, Camille, Rengar. Red team, quote unquote, must ban these champions every time. And the statistic was that, blue side was like 75% win rate. It was something obnoxious, right? They were winning every game because red side literally had prescripted bans, which means blue side got to do any 3 bans and a first pick they wanted to make the draft. And of course, blue side won every game. Teams that did not ban exactly LeBlanc, Rengar, Camille had a much higher win rate than teams that did. So by saying, look, these champions are so good, we lose every time. It's like, dog, you have no bans, you lose every time. Like, you're objectively losing champ select. If you're willing to trade, maybe it's not as good, but you're still hurting yourself by doing the meta bans. And it was still sub 50, and it was still weak, but in the only time I've looked at the actual data, doing the meta bans made you a weaker team. Because you were predictable, and the other team could heavily outdraft you, and it was better to trade.
And if you left up an OP, you generally have a plan to deal with it.
And sure, it definitely implied you were a team that had built a plan, but those plans worked.
Yeah,
like looking back on it. So like I think that like, hey, we saw the Fiora counterpick to Aatrox. We've seen 2 Aatroxes in NA since the changes, and one of them was the Optic win. And Optic was a team that had not been able to get any wins at all until they did that. And they've tried York and a GP and stuff like this, and you're talking about counterpicks being good. Like we've seen teams trying to beat Nocturne out, and like in Korea, for example, Nocturne's not nearly as high priority. Like Trundle's a first picker ban instead, and it's like there's clearly things that like NA is like refusing to play against that like maybe aren't really so good, but for whatever reason, whether our play styles or counterpicks aren't ready or whatever, it's like red teams are hamstringing themselves, even though they probably don't have to.
Yeah. If I had to summarize, I would basically say blue side is stronger right now.
Yes.
By a little bit,
Yep.
but it's made more so because poor counterpicking, and that's the red side advantage
Yes.
in Champ Select. So I agree with what you guys said. It's a good conversation. Thank you very much for the Twitter question. You guys got any final thoughts before we wrap up the show?
Thanks for coming in, Phreak.
Thanks, Kobe.
Appreciate you.
I appreciate you as well, Jet. I appreciate you equally.
Where's your laptop, Phreak?
I didn't want to bring it. Well, I actually forgot
Here's
to
the
bring
pen
it.
that has been chewed on instead.
I haven't been touching that, thankfully. I didn't chew on it either. I forgot my laptop this morning. I also didn't really need it. You guys brought up all the stats that you needed, and I like hanging out with you guys, so thanks.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. We will have you back.
See you tomorrow
again.
for this or that, Jet.
Yeah, we film it literally right after this show, but we don't release it.
You've ruined the immersion.
Spoilers.
See you tomorrow, Jet.
This episode to dive. If you have any questions you want answered on the show, tweet @RadChat, @RadAzale, @RadKobe.
Not right.
Not Phreak. He's not going to be on next week, we don't
Nope.
think. Kobe should be back next week, and this weekend we're into the second last week of the NA LCS regular season. NA LCS Countdown kicks off at 1:30 Pacific time on Saturday, and we got Echo Fox Return of Thieves right off the bat. See you then.
See you then.